Benny the Butcher, easily the least consistent member of Griselda, as the Griselda crew are generally known for dropping releases very, very consistently, more so than they probably should, especially in the case of Westside Gunn, who seems to drop a mixtape or an album more times than people wash their bedding. I appreciate that Benny is a little bit slower with his craft, probably a bit more meticulous, a bit more concise, because I assume that if you're not dropping music that often, then you're really just saving the best of the best for your albums. But the thing is that Conway at least proved me wrong with the fact that he dropped an album very recently in September, and I was kind of not anticipating it at all, and it ended up being one of my favorite rap releases of 2020, despite the fact that I thought maybe he should slow it down and potentially take a break. Whereas that expectation was never really there for Benny, so I was looking forward to this due to the fact that Hit Boy is on every track, which I thought was an interesting combination with the fact that it's not something I was quite anticipating. And the production on this album has probably the most lively energy to it of most Griselda releases I've heard ever. What we tend to get is very slow, menacing, very 90s inspired gangster rap, boom bap, very just, I guess, dirty, grimy production, whereas this time around Hit Boy is bringing some really pacey beats. The sampling being used across this album is just really lively as well. The soul samples of vocals that are laced into a lot of these beats are fantastic. And Benny is just bringing some really great flows across this album. He is just sounding really hungry, really energetic, and I am just totally here for it because he, for the most part, is sounding fantastic on this album. The first couple of tracks instantly grip your attention, and the pace of the album doesn't really ever slow down. There isn't any track that instantly loses your attention or anything like that. Like, the experience of this album is very gratifying because there isn't really any drop in quality, there isn't any duds, just every track just seems to be produced fantastically, and Benny is bringing it on every track as well. I'd say more often than not, the bars are exactly what you'd expect. Sly Green, just very braggadocious, just kind of dunking on rappers who might be younger than him or his peers that he just doesn't believe have it like he does. And one of my favorite things in hip hop is when a rapper does this and they genuinely sound like they're actually greater than everyone else. In that moment, you're listening to the rapper and you just can't really think of anyone else who might be as good as them, even if that's not true. But I just love it when a rapper can sell their brags in a way that just makes them sound so entertaining and makes them sound so fantastic. And maybe not every bar on this track is like amazing or mind-blowing, but just the way he's bringing it here just makes it not matter, because he is just sounding as good as he's telling you he is. Although he does delve into different topics here, I mean, the fact that this track is very braggadocious doesn't mean that every track leads into that either, because the track Famous is interesting, where he's talking about how the fame isn't really exactly what he expected. And to be honest, he'd rather not have the fame if he could choose that. One of the best lines here is where he says, chose money over fame, but he ended up getting both, which I think is really interesting because he clearly had a vision of his life to end up differently than it ended up being. And it's a really interesting perspective of someone who clearly didn't want something, but it's something in your life that you can't exactly control. Like, he can't control the fact that he's gotten extremely popular in the rap world and is probably going to keep getting popular, especially if he drops more and more albums of this caliber. There are some really solid features on this album too. You've of course got the Griselda posse cut. There's always one, no matter who is dropping the album, whether it's Westside Gunn, whether it's Benny, whether it's Conway, there's going to be a track with all of them on. It's not one of my favorite tracks, but I'm happy that when you get them all coming together in small doses, it ends up working really well and sounds like it fits the album quite nicely. Whereas that Griselda project, where it had every track with all of them on, just got quite tiring quite quickly. As well as that, we've got Lil Wayne and Big Sean on a track together. I was hesitant about this one because I just wasn't sure what they'd exactly bring to this album. Up until that point, I just didn't really envision a feature from either of those rappers. So to come on one song together, I was a bit like, what's this even going to sound like? But you know what? They're all right. They sound pretty good. Lil Wayne particularly is bringing a lot of his animated voices that he brings to his verses often. The Big Sean feature is pretty fine too, which is surprising because I thought his album this year was pretty bad. You've got the track One Way Flight, which is kind of typical stuff about having a girl or having hoes or even having bitches. It's not the best lyrical track. In fact, actually, it might be one of the worst lyrical moments on the entire thing. Because with Freddie Gibbs's feature, I think he sounds really great on the chorus, but then when it comes to his like little verse that he does, I was kind of underwhelmed with his bars. And usually I'm here to praise the hell out of him whenever he's on a feature, but this is probably one of his weaker ones, I think. That one bit where he says he's got the ugly white girl and then he whips it and she like turns into Miss Universe is just so corny to me. And then the other one about how he controls his bitches OnlyFans accounts. I don't know, man. He's just throwing in lines here that are confusing to me. Maybe they're comical in a way, but I just don't know. I just don't think he really brings it on this one. The best lyrical moments actually come really late on in the album. Like, it's similar to the Conway album where you've just got these really interesting emotional moments coming towards the end, like on New Streets, for example. This is honestly one of the most interesting hip-hop songs I think I've heard all year, because Benny is essentially calling out the people that fake their kind of like gangster lifestyles, and he's essentially coming in and saying, look, I actually live this, and the way you're glorifying it is not really acceptable. One of the more interesting bars is where he says, you know, the game comes with more consequences than just jail. And one of the more interesting ones that he drops on this track as well is where he sits on some songs that he knows would do really well, but he chooses not to put them out there. I think I read this line as a way of him trying to say that he could easily put out songs that maybe glorify the, you know, the gangster lifestyle, the selling drugs, all that kind of stuff. Like, he could do that, but he's just not sure if he morally is capable of doing that, because he just doesn't want to put that kind of work out there. And I don't know if maybe that I'm misinterpreting that line, but it was quite an interesting way he worded it, which made me think about it a lot more. But I don't know, man. I think this track is really interesting in the way that he's coming about it from his perspective. He makes a reference that ends up being a big topic for one of the tracks towards the end of the song, where he says the symptoms of abandonment suffer damages, like we suffer damages from that, because on one of the tracks later on, he's talking about how he's raised by a single mother. On the track Thank God I Made It, where he says he doesn't respect a man who doesn't raise his son. And then he goes on to say how, you know, you can blame the white man, but essentially, you know, if you're abandoning your child, that's really more of an impact on someone's life, which again was an interesting perspective to come from, because I don't really know if I've ever heard a rapper quite word it like that. He's essentially saying that he's so thankful that he made it, because he knows so many people in his life that didn't make it and did end up dying, and that includes his brother, who by the sounds of it on this album did end up being killed. So you can tell that on a lot of this album he's coming from a place of experience, of a kind of like wiser, older person who just isn't really confident in, you know, glorifying any of that lifestyle when it's had such a huge impact on his life. Trade It All is very much just reliving his memories, his experiences, and saying that all of the fame, all of the success, all of the money, everything he's got right now, he would just lose in a heartbeat if it meant that he could bring the people he loves back. Which is generally one of those things that's easier said than done. But when you look into the lyrics and, you know, all of the things I've just been talking about just then, you know, thinking about what he's been saying across this album, it seems pretty believable that he would follow through with that, because I think the loss of his brother and loss of anyone else in his life is just so, you know, devastating, that bringing those back means more to him than having success and having the luxurious lifestyle that he may live. The closing track focuses on, once again, him kind of bragging, talking about how, you know, he's a legend right now and he will be a legend later in life as well. Kind of like that track that Drake dropped, actually. I'm sure Drake has quite a similar lyrical theme track. I think it was on the If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. And the production here is just very celebratory, just like it is on a lot of this album, actually. It's just very triumphant, larger than life on almost every track. Just the sampling that's used from Hit Boy, the soul samples, the jazzier samples, everything just comes together so well. And Benny fits over it extremely well too. And yeah, I mean, about a month ago, or maybe just under a month ago, I was saying how Conway had one of the best Griselda releases to date, but Benny the Butcher came through here on Burden of Proof and is kind of rivaling that title, and it's barely even been a month. I'm really liking this, and once again, I'm impressed with the, lyrical themes. Everything about what Benny is bringing to the table here is just so damn good. I could totally see myself playing this over and over again for a long time. And yeah, Griselda once again killing it here, whereas before I was a bit more skeptical of what they were doing, but 2 projects in a row now I've just been super impressed by. I'm gonna go 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10, definitely one of the highlights in hip hop for 2020, once again from Griselda. Benny's really won me over with this one, and hopefully you like it as much as I do too, because I think this could easily be many people's rap album of the year, and that's totally understandable. So thank you for watching my review. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you agree with what I said. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you think of this album. Thank you for watching this review. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell too so you don't miss videos. Do have a good day, and goodbye.